Good morning, afternoon or evening, ladies and gentlemen, Allincrypto here, and welcome back, guys, on this magnificent Monday for what is going to be nothing short of another jam-packed daily market update. And as always, we have quite a lot to get into. We're going to be starting the video off by looking at a recent talk given by the largest asset manager in the world, essentially really promoting the case for Bitcoin. Now, before we had a Bitcoin ETF, we really spoke about why it was such a big deal. And we looked at gold when it had its first ETF and the trajectory it then embarked on. And we also looked at the S&P when it got its first ETF. Certainly within the United States, in both accounts, there were ETFs further afield, just like what we saw with Bitcoin or around the world. And ultimately, they embarked on this sort of monumental bull market as the likes of BlackRock and other asset managers really promoted it in regards to being a kind of staple part of anybody's portfolio. And we did look at that article or that report done by BlackRock where they really spoke about Bitcoin, a unique diversifier, and they make the case that Bitcoin, okay, it might move with risk on, but it's actually a risk off asset, just like the likes of gold, and would make a kind of good diversifier as a result of that. They were essentially making the case for it finding its way into your portfolio. And if you look at the amount of asset managers or funds out there, yes, they've increased drastically in regards to Bitcoin exposure, but we're nowhere near that kind of end trajectory in regards to the Bitcoinization of people's portfolios, or certainly the allocation of Bitcoin in regards to portfolios. There's billions, if not trillions of dollars that are still to flow into Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space more broadly. So we're going to be exploring that talk to start the video off that was recently gave. We're also going to be talking about how, despite an interesting year for Bitcoin, this year really has been a year of rate readjustment expectations and a pullback for Bitcoin, very typical to what it does in and around the halvings or post-halving. Despite us really pulling back since March, the year-to-date sort of flows or returns for Bitcoin still make it the best performing asset, second to none. And ultimately, this is going to continue. We think Bitcoin is about to start to accelerate. Not only technically do we think that's the case, but we've also got this macro backdrop that we'll be diving into in the form of global liquidity. We'll be looking at a report from Lynn Alden. We'll also be listening to what Julian Bittle has to say. I think he's one of Raoul's guys, one of Raoul's henchmen in regards to global liquidity, because markets and cycles ultimately move off that. And then we're going to be talking about some of the absolute records that we are seeing getting smashed in regards to ETF flows when it comes to the traditional markets. And we think traditional markets are all poised, or certainly we see technical merit to suggest that the S&P, the stock market, is likely going to go significantly higher. Small caps look amazing. We'll fly by some of those. Then we'll talk about Bitcoin, and then we'll wrap up with CoinShares weekly report. So as always, we've got a lot to get into. I'm sorry for the long intros, guys, but it's always good to let you guys know what you're in for. This is from Eric Balanchunas, the guy to follow when it comes to ETFs. He's the senior ETF analyst over at Bloomberg. An amazing photo here. If you stop and think about it, the largest asset manager in the world, a well-polished case for Bitcoin to clients with ginormous charts of dissemination of the dollar's purchasing power since the establishment of the Federal Reserve. Life moves fast. And doesn't it just? Yesterday, we did a video where we looked at the new candidate for the Satoshi Nakamoto sort of story, and what a load of BS we truly think that is. We happen to think there's more nefarious intents behind Bitcoin in regards to getting us to some sort of global one world system, and a global money is very much a staple part of that. This is the agenda, in my opinion, and Bitcoin, I think, plays a role in that. That doesn't mean that we don't admire Bitcoin for many reasons and see the sort of prophesying of it by the likes of Frederick Hayek, Milton Friedman, Ludwig von Mises. They all spoke about this e-money that would essentially take power away or sort of decentralize and democratize money. We're yet to see how this story really ends, though, with Bitcoin and who is really truly behind it. And they constantly keep throwing all these dead guys. It's always a dead guy in the mix because, of course, they can't talk. And I think Len Sessamon was a bit of a lame one. But isn't it interesting how the likes of BlackRock, who would probably have the most to gain from maintaining control over a world reserve currency like the dollar and promoting its sort of beneficial nature, or promoting it, as a kind of a currency to use, are actually now pivoting to Bitcoin, which is supposed to be there to topple over these institutions. We smell a rat, guys, but this is very interesting. Bitcoin through the lens of a global whatever. Purchasing power of the US dollar has declined significantly over time. And essentially, they're making the case for Bitcoin here. And this is the largest asset manager, BlackRock, in the world, essentially saying this. Eric Balanchunas goes on to say, this is why, in my opinion, you have to either be totally biased or ignorant to poo-poo the Bitcoin ETF's potential success. Total dig at Jim Bianco there, who was saying that they failed. We also disagree that, Bitcoin ETFs haven't failed. Okay, you might not have seen the adoption by boomers yet, but it is to come. Again, we spoke about that at the start of the video. This level of salesmanship combined with low fees, high liquidity, and trusted brand names is effing powerful. To be fair, I'd say the same about most ETF categories. This is big, and this is why we question the origins and the kind of divine nature of Bitcoin. If you look at Bitcoin's, it's the best performing asset so far this year, despite us pulling back. We're going to come on to the Bitcoin chart in just a second, because we've got confluence in regards to, if you guys haven't considered becoming a Patreon, it's £30 a month. In my opinion, it's well worth the value. You get 2 meetings with me a week. One is an ad hoc session where we look at whatever you guys want to look at, and we get together as a community on Wednesday. And the other one is where we give our sort of big picture view and why we're positioned in the manner that we are of the markets, which takes place on Sunday at 5 p.m. If you join today, go and watch that video. We will be coming up with a yearly membership. Right now it's only monthly, where you actually get a discount on it and you'll get access to all the courses as a kind of benefit. So do watch out for that. We'll be looking to release that in the next week or so. But do consider becoming a Patreon. We did a great meeting yesterday where we look at everything. Bitcoin, the best performing asset year to date. And this is going to continue because global liquidity is on the rise. This is our macro picture. This is going to be driven by central banks, most notably the Fed, which is the largest central bank. They're ultimately going to encourage the creation of more money, which essentially, and credit, which essentially is what liquidity is, through that lowering of interest rates. The JPY and the BOJ and their actions is a great example of how central banks manipulate a currency and thus the markets through setting sort of borrowing rates, manipulating the debt side of things. But global liquidity is set to rise, and this aligns with the Bitcoin 4-year cycle and all the other cycles. And the beautiful thing is Bitcoin, according to a study from Lynn Alden, which we already knew, I commissioned a research report written by Sam Kalla, I don't know who that is, to quantify Bitcoin's correlation to measures of global money creation relative to other asset classes. Results: Bitcoin moves in the directional of global M2. 83% of the time, more than any other asset. You can see that the SPY is not that far off, but if we are heading into this increased global liquidity environment, and let's just do something interesting. TradingView actually have a global liquidity index, which we'll throw on for you. It's actually quite good, although it comes up in this stupid yellow for some reason. Bad TradingView. Although that could just be my settings, actually, guys. You can see the correlation between global liquidity and Bitcoin. And global liquidity is really yet to start to accelerate. We are seeing the likes of M2 increase. US M2. Can you see how correlated these are? Global liquidity will follow. And we think this is really, it's on that upward trajectory. According to this report, Bitcoin's going to do the best on the back end of it all. And this was a tweet that I want to sort of dive over to from Julian Bittle. So you've got this great fundamental reason to be bullish on Bitcoin. It's been promoted by asset managers across the world. It wouldn't have got this far if they were going to destroy it. People say, they can't destroy Bitcoin. They've disrupted, they've rewritten history. You've been lied to about so much. And people say, oh, no, there's no way. Look at the last 4 years, for goodness sake. And you don't think that they could take out Bitcoin or certainly disrupt it or certainly, manipulate it? They own all the money. You don't think they could cause it to crash? Or they could ban it from a country? And it's like the war on drugs. What a failure. And who are they to tell anybody what they can and can't take? You don't think they could. It's just the most naive thing in the world to suggest that they couldn't hinder Bitcoin to a degree where they'd make it unusable, certainly for people in the US and the UK. So my reality is that they're going to allow this to succeed to a great degree. And as altcoin investors, we think we're going to benefit from this. Anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand. As you may know, we've been expecting global M2 to break higher. I think everyone has been. Well, that's now happening. We've also been keeping a close watch on GMI Weekly Global Liquidity Index, which focuses on public liquidity, specifically central bank balance sheets in net liquidity terms. That also broke higher. The breakout in both public and private liquidity composites has pushed our GMI total liquidity index into a breakout too. And if our hypothesis around the everything code, I like Raul's everything code, I agree with him on it totally. I don't think Raul's a great technical analyst, but I don't think he's trying to be one. I think he has some great guests on, and I agree with his everything code in the banana sort of zone that we're moving into. Is correct. This is still going much, much higher. Historically, these breakouts have been great news for Bitcoin. We've shown you the correlation and why that's the case. And we usually see Bitcoin responded almost immediately. I'd also argue that if we weren't for a black swan event, even after the March 2020 Bitcoin events, we would have just kept climbing. I think so as well. Perhaps not to the same degree because we wouldn't have had that $7 trillion, but that's another story. I believe we're closing in on the last chance saloon to go long before the banana zone really kicks in. Q4 is looking perfect storm for me. And this is what they're showing. And we showed you just the correlations there between Bitcoin, global liquidity, M2. There's a number of ways you can look at global liquidity through a number of lenses, but it's predominantly central banks. We say central banks are what going to see this cycle plays out. Fundamentally, you've got every reason to be bullish on Bitcoin, certainly macroeconomically and also technically. Talking about the macroeconomic and the rising of global liquidity, this is from Eric again. ETFs globally took in, this is nearly $500 billion in Q3, which crushed the old records by 30%. BlackRock and Vanguard took in about $100 billion each. China added $65 billion, which is crazy high thanks to the GovQE spree. Isn't it interesting? Global liquidity is up to what do China do? What are all central banks? They're all coordinated. It's like there's somebody behind the scenes, isn't it? Or some people or group, Total global ETF assets now at $14 trillion. We predict $35 trillion by 2035. They're going to continue to devalue money, which means you should all be investors in assets. Not saying everyone should be. I'll always have some saying, it's so immature, you're saying everyone should be a crypto investor. No. I actually think a lot of people probably shouldn't even play with the crypto space because it's too volatile for emotional instability. And this is why, if you look at this is essentially the same chart as the S&P and all these others. And markets look just fantastic. Not only Bitcoin, we've looked at the SPY, we've looked at a number of things. SPY and global liquidity. It's front running it. And why is that? Well, markets are forward looking, aren't they? And often it will front run. So if it wasn't for this, I think we'd have gone on and done this naturally. Anyway, when we look at Bitcoin, let's get back to that. It's a great picture that we have in front of us. Let's go back to a weekly time frame. There's a number of technical patterns, including being in an uptrend. So there's 4 things right off the bat that give you confidence in regards to the direction we're going. There is that smaller pattern that we do think is going to play out that takes you to 84K. The stage is absolutely set, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, it truly, truly is. It's not long before Bitcoin sort of breaks out. This is just a retest of your splitter that was previously pinned user resistance. You've now flipped it as support. That's a great sign. When you look at the likes of Total 3, bull flag, Total 2, bull flag, Total cryptocurrency market cap, bull flag that sees you run sort of $4 trillion, nearly a doubling in regards to where you currently are today. When it walketh, talketh, and quacketh like a duck, ladies and gentlemen, what is it? It's a duck. It doesn't just identify as one, it actually is. So the stage is beautifully, beautifully set. Quick look at CoinShares report, because we like to do this on sort of Monday. This is their 203 Digital Asset Fund weekly flows report. Unfortunately, outflows of $147 million amid weaker sentiment. Multi-asset products saw inflows for the 16th straight week. So let's just focus on that because we do track multi-asset products. They saw inflows of 29 million, which is significant for them. These have totaled US 431 million, representing 10% of assets under management. So we're seeing multi-asset projects being favoured among investors who prefer to invest in a diverse basket of assets rather than individuals. Isn't it interesting as we're expecting Bitcoin dominance to roll? And let's look at those multi-asset products. Where are we? Grayscale's Digital Large Cap Fund. Again, this gives us confidence in regards to the direction that we think the space is going. When it walketh, talketh, and quacketh like a duck, ladies and gentlemen, it is a duck. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. Last thing is, we are looking to hire someone in regards to coming on and helping us do some research to essentially write content. If you're looking for a career change, might be a great time to do so. Certainly if you're passionate about this industry and some of the coins that I also talk about. We've had many applicants, and I thank you all for those applications. We're going to continue to advertise for a little bit. Then we're going to sort of go through everyone's applications and then start calling people up for sort of over the internet interviews, face-to-face interviews. If you think you're interested in that, do check the link in the description. Guys, it's a great space to be in. It truly is. And maybe there could be an opportunity for a little bit of co-hosting there to really sort of get your own name out and grow yourself in regards to this industry. That is it from me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. The stage is set. We've just got to see it through. You've just got to be able to stomach and ride the volatility. It works in both manners. But the macro, fundamental, and technical picture is a bright one for the cryptocurrency space. That's it from me. I'm going to love and leave you. Have a magical Monday, and I'll see you all in the next one.